Yeah. No?
It's really choppy, but I can hear someone.
Wow.
This might cause feedback. Is this less choppy, Michelle, through this microphone?
Yes, yeah, it does much better.
Okay, there's something crazy with your microphone, man, that makes it choppy.
Ooh. Oh no, someone... No.
Okay, I'm going to try to point my computer in this direction, and hopefully that'll pick it up.
Actually, I'll just mute my mic.
Yeah, mute your mic on that one.
Yeah, I'm muted. We are ready to go.
Michelle, can you hear me from all the way over here?
Mm-hmm.
Over here? Mm-hmm. Over here?
Oh no, there's an infinite echo, so someone needs to mute themselves.
All right. And good to go. Almost. What did I get? Come on, loading.
Oh boy.
Oh, can you believe that or not?
Just hit it again. That's all it helps. Wow.
Alright, so what I did before is I hit the button to make it full screen and then I hit present. Full screen button is in the upper
That's this
left.
one?
Yeah.
It seems to have no trouble being full screen. It's just not actually showing the
Maybe it's
slides.
like hanging out on a different like screen or something.
Wow.
So did you have the
Let's go not full screen.
We could just go not full screen.
I know Hangouts have trouble with full screen in general.
Although it's going to not show my points one by one. That way it'll show them all at once.
Oh, it's reconnecting.
Reconnecting.
I'll just refresh the page. Reconnecting,
It's not
presentation.
one thing, it's another thing. So this is interesting. Your computer works fine with the projector, where mine doesn't. But my computer seems to work fine with Hangouts. Yours seems to want to.
So we're both sitting here like,
I'm looking very serious.
This will be us for like the entire hangout, just like, what is... Let's try to push that button. Push that one. Okay, I'm just gonna kill that tab. And try it again. And do I even have the internet connection anymore? What do I do?
So this is why I should have just put this in the office or something.
Alright. Are you connected to the internet at all?
Yeah, I just pulled up the Google homepage. Right? Unless it was a fake. That wasn't fake.
That's right.
Yeah, it's definitely legit. It's a legit fake page there.
It's ridiculous.
Cool avatar, Michelle.
There you go.
Hey, sweet,
Alright.
finally. Alright, so bust out some full screen.
Make sure they.
Bust out some present. Or maybe it'll just take like super long.
There it is. Or you got to share a screen still.
Oh, it's not shared anymore?
No, we're still looking at your face.
Dang it.
Share the
Entire
entire
screen.
screen.
Entire screen, everything. Yes.
Share screen. It's like my favorite
Okay,
thing.
just click it. Let's get this going, man.
Yes.
Oh.
Don't do full screen.
Okay,
It's not gonna work.
All right. You're just like this.
I guess, yeah, do I have to click on the slide or can I do it with the keys? I can do it with the keys. We're good.
Get the keys, man, get the keys.
Of course, it's not actually showing. There we go. There we go. All right. So, I'm going to give you guys an introduction to the problem, why we care about workflow. Then Raphael's going to talk about how to use the features module. Steve's going to walk us through doing this type of workflow with the features module on Pantheon. And then Michelle's going to talk about a variation of doing workflow using Composer. So, what is the problem? You probably shouldn't be changing things on production. There's a couple of reasons for this. We get to see them all at once. So we can animate them anyway. So users will see the changes as you make them. If you have a bunch of things to do, like add a field, create a view, mess with a bunch of stuff, they'll see each of those changes as you make them. Some of the changes that you do can be destructive. Deleting a field, once you've deleted it and cron has run, that data is gone. So if you accidentally delete the wrong thing on production, oops, you could break your site completely. If there's some configuration or enabling a bad module, suddenly the whole site is down. And stakeholders like the client or product owner doesn't get to see any of the changes before they go live, because you're making them in real time. So you need to have some kind of site building workflow. And this is what we mean by workflow. So you have your dev site where you're actually configuring Drupal, changing settings and stuff. That could be on a local dev environment on your computer, like Aqua Dev Desktop, MAMP, that sort of thing. Or it could be, somewhere on the internet. My example URL would be dev.clientname.mydrupalshopname.com. And then you want to push those changes after you're ready to your staging site. And this is somewhere on the internet that the client or other stakeholders can go look at what you've built before you take it live and approve it, test it, make sure everything works. And then ultimately, you push your changes to the production site, the actual client site. So in order to copy all of this stuff around to these different sites, we need to understand what all the stuff is in your Drupal site. We have the stuff on disk. One bit of this is the code. So this is Drupal core plus all the modules and themes you have enabled. And then you have the files, so the images, other files that your users are uploading. Then there's the stuff in the database. There's configuration. So this is the stuff that you're doing as a site builder, creating content types, adding fields, setting up views. And then there's the content. And this is the stuff that your users are creating. So they're creating individual pieces of content from that content type. The users on your site, the comments that they add, anything that they create. So the things that are created by the site builder, that's the code and configuration. And this stuff we want to push upwards. We create it on our dev site, we want to push it to staging, and then ultimately push it to production. The things created by the users, the files and the content, this stuff is sacred. When you're pushing stuff from staging to production, you definitely do not want to accidentally wipe it out, right? You don't want to accidentally create content that they've been creating in the meantime. But, so we're not pushing it up, but you might want to pull it down. Like take the production data and put it on your dev site so that you can test your changes with real production data. So code and configuration goes upward, files and content are pulled downward. So what's the big deal, man? We're just copying stuff, right? The challenge comes in that we can't just blindly copy the files and the database because all of this different stuff in your Drupal site is kind of mixed up. The content and the configuration are both in the database. So if you were to just blindly push the database up, you would definitely move your configuration, but you'd also wipe out all the content. And the files and code are both in the file system, but at least they're actually segregated, right? Like the code is your Drupal roots and the stuff in modules, the stuff in themes, and the files, the user-created files will be under like site's default files, or if you're doing multi-site sites, your site name files. So those we can copy separately pretty easily. So how do we untangle all of these things? In Drupal 7, the answer is features. Raphael will be guiding you on a tutorial through features. But I'll just say now that it basically allows you to get a list of all of the configuration things on your site, choose the ones you want, and it will generate a module for you that when you enable that module on your site or any other site, that configuration happens, right? So features helps by taking all this configuration stuff that's in the database and putting it in code. And there's a couple of cool advantages to that. We can put it in Git, so now these configuration changes that you're making can be stored in revision control. If someone makes a change that messes things up, you can go and say, you know, what was in the last revision? What changed? How did we break it? How can we revert it back to the old state? And now, most importantly for workflow, code is the only thing that we're pushing up. Because code and configuration are together, so we just push code up and pull down files and the other database stuff. So, yeah, overall, we're pushing up code, pulling down files and database. Short note about Drupal 8. In Drupal 8, configuration and content in the database will be completely segregated. So this problem will be much easier to solve. We won't need to go through this whole mess of pulling configuration into code just to solve this problem. And now, Raphael.
Well, thank you, David. So what I'm going to do real quick is just take you on a really basic kind of a tour of features and just show you exactly what it does and how it does it. Just to get a really quick, basic understanding of how it works. And that way you can see that, if you like the way this whole thing works, then you can use it in your projects. At this point in Drupal's lifespan, pretty much any serious Drupal developer is going to be using features to manage the things that they configure. That's really, right now, one of the only ways to solve this problem well. And it's a solution that is pretty time-honored and well-honed, and a lot of the weird little bugs and things have been worked out of it by this point. So I do have a couple slides, and I'm going to do a demo. So Drupal features, very quickly. All right, so as David mentioned, Drupal is kind of strange. With a traditional PHP app, generally as a developer, you're just making a bunch of PHP code. And then, that's your app, and then, there's a database or whatever, but you don't really build things in the database. Your app is your code. Drupal is quite strange, because with Drupal...
You need to share your screen if you want these beautiful slides to...
Not sharing anymore? What the heck?
It ended for some reason.
Share the screen? Okay. There we go. Get a portal into madness. Pretty cool. All right. So for those of you who missed out on the excellent first slide, there it is. So Drupal is kind of weird because in Drupal, your code base isn't necessarily the thing that you want. A lot of times in Drupal, you'll install a module, and that module is really just a tool that you use to build the thing that you want. So a lot of the times, Drupal ends up building itself. So a lot of times, Drupal, you build your Drupal site or your Drupal app using Drupal itself. And that's the part where Drupal gets really weird, because all these things that you build using Drupal end up being stored in your database. So then there's the problem of, okay, how do you transfer these things to your different environments which have different databases? That's the really weird part. And so feature steps in to turn your clicks into code, and that way you can deploy it from environment to environment, version control it, distribute it, do whatever you want with it. As David said before, features exports into module code. So you point and click and stuff in the Drupal UI, you build what you want to build. Then you go into features and you basically check off the things that you want. That exports into a module, and then you upload that module wherever, to dev, to staging, or to production, or wherever it's got to go. You enable that module, and now you have everything that you just built. And you also have mechanisms to upgrade and revert those changes and work with them in a way that's actually sane, and in a way that works with multiple developers. So just a few things before we get into the actual demo. As I said, we can re-export things, revert things, and I'll show you all of that. And actually, I'm going to go through this stuff as well, just to give you a little look ahead. Actually, I'll save that till the end. So let's do the demo. All right, so I have in here an awesome corporate intranet site, and there's this beautiful feature that I built. All right, so this is something that I've pointed and clicked on stuff to build. So this is an announcement content type. So if I go to content types and just check out the things that I built, there it is. So here's my announcement content type. If I look at it, you can see that it's got a couple fields on it. It has a title, it has a body, and as soon as it comes up, you'll see it also has a term reference field where I'm kind of specifying I have a taxonomy vocabulary where me as a developer, I've outlined a couple announcement types in a hierarchy that I want them to select from. So pretty simple. Also, what we're looking at here is a view. All right, so we've got a content type, we've got fields on that content type, we've got a taxonomy vocabulary with taxonomy terms, and we've got a view. And now, how would I export this to the production site? Well, without features, I would actually have to go to the production site and point and click on stuff and basically redo everything that I just did. Or I can export this to a feature. So let me show you how to do that. The first thing you'll have to do is obviously install the features module, and that'll pretty much get you 90% of the way there. In this case, I'm working with taxonomy terms, which are pretty tricky, and that's done through a module called Features UUID and UUID. So you install the features module, and then you can go into structure and features and actually build it. So it's actually quite simple. So this will show you your existing features that you have available to you. So in my case, here's a bunch of custom features that I've built, and I'm in the process of working on them, so they're all overridden. But this is what we call the features UI. So this is where you can just check out existing features that you've got enabled. You can see if they are overridden, which means that the stuff that's on your Drupal site doesn't match what's in code. I could also say default here. If it says default, it means that what's on your actual site matches what you have in your code. Additionally,
just 2 seconds. How did we get to the screen that we're at right this second?
Just from the structures menu. So we're in your Drupal root /admin/structure,
okay.
And we're just under features. That's all it is to it.
Okay, so once you install a features module, the features option appears under the structure.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's how we got here. And by default, it does come with a few example features, which are right here. You can basically ignore those. So what we want to do is we want to go up here to create feature. Okay, so first of all, I want to take care of some really simple stuff. What is the name of your feature? I'm going to call it announcements. That's going to be my feature. A description, I'll just say this is a description. And package. So what this is talking about here, whenever you go into the module list and it kind of has your modules grouped, you'll have a group for views modules and a group for core modules. So this is that group. So for example, if I'm creating a whole bunch of features for my own website, I'll just change this to be a package of my custom package. And that way all these feature modules will all be grouped together really nicely in the module list. And I also recommend that you give it a version. And normally 7.x-1.0 is what you start with. it's good to give it a version right out of the gate, just because occasionally, in some workflows, I know I've gotten mixed up in the past because I never used to put this version on there. And occasionally I get mixed up as to, okay, what version is on production versus what do I have in dev? Like, ooh, great, I don't know which one is which. So putting a version on it is obviously a responsible thing to do. All right, but anyways, that's all the boring stuff. The good stuff is over here on the right-hand side of the page. So all of this, all these list items here, this is all the stuff inside of your Drupal site. So if you have gone to the Drupal UI and let's say you've typed in what you want to be your front page, or you have set some settings, or you've created a vocabulary, or you've done anything by pointing and clicking on stuff, chances are really good whatever you've done is going to be in this list someplace. All right. So I'm randomly here and show you some things. Here's all the menus which you can capture inside this feature if I wanted to. If I wanted to, I could capture rules inside this feature. If I wanted to, I could capture some vocabularies inside this feature. So really anything that you build using Drupal itself is going to show up in this list. So how do you actually get this stuff into your feature? Well, it's pretty simple. So you click on what you want. In this case, I'm going to go straight for the content type. I'm going to click on the content type that I want to include in the feature. And boom, we're now done. So you notice features is very, very good at determining dependencies. All right, so we have this content type, and that has fields attached to it. And these fields require different modules, right? So if you have a field X from a module X, well, chances are that you'll need to have that module be a dependency of this feature. So what happens is whenever you select anything inside this features UI and you click on it to add it to your feature, features is going to go out, it's going to collect all the dependencies and all the things that belong to that piece of whatever, right? Whatever you created, and it's going to go through it and collect every single dependency that it can possibly find, and normally it does a very good job of that. So in my case, I just clicked on the content type once, and it went through, it found all the dependencies. So these would be modules that have to be enabled in order for this feature to function. So for example, I have a taxonomy vocabulary included as a field within that content type. So chances are I want to have taxonomy be a dependency of this module. Also, it went through and it found all the fields that belong to that content type. So we have the body and the field announcement type. So it found all those fields that belong to it. Here, StrongArm. Okay, so this is another module that you should know about. I recommend if you use features, you always also install StrongArm. So there's kind of like these 4 horsemen that go together with features that I always use: features, StrongArm, UUID, and features UUID. It's pretty much like a common setup for me. So StrongArm is, it has kind of a weird name, but StrongArm basically means variables. So for example, your site homepage, that's a variable. And that is what StrongArm is going to capture. So here, this content type has some different settings. It has some settings for, comments and field settings and, menu options and other random things that it captured along with that content type. And StrongArm is what's going to capture those for you. Also, one of the fields that I had on my announcement content type, it was that term reference field. I'm saying, hey, okay, this field, I want the user to be able to select what type of announcement this is. So here's where it's pulling in that taxonomy vocabulary. All right. So I won't talk too much about this because it's kind of a greater discussion, but I've also installed something called UUID and features UUID, which is a little bit more advanced. I won't really talk about it a whole lot. All I'll say is that some of the things that we need to capture might not be pure configuration. All right. In this case, I want to capture a taxonomy term because me as a developer, I have made this taxonomy list of all these different announcement types that I want to capture in this feature. And so using UUID and features UUID, we can go out and capture these items, like nodes and taxonomy terms, which would normally be pure content, and we can pull them into features. So that's all I'm going to say about that. And you can see here's all of the announcement types that I've defined. So we have, event, maintenance, security, all these different types of announcements. All right, so that is pretty much it. With experience, you have to, in my case, I found that it's really helpful to watch these dependencies. So some of these dependencies don't really need to be there for this feature to work. So for example, this taxonomy container dependency, I know that this feature will work perfectly fine without that. That just provides a fancy widget, and it doesn't have to be a hard dependency of this feature. So just recognize that everything in this dependency box will end up being a hard dependency of your module. All right. So in order to install this feature and actually use it, all of these things have to be installed and active on the site. So in this case, I'm actually going to remove that dependency from it. And you will only know what to remove just based on your experience. So it's kind of an advanced thing, but I just wanted to just kind of let you know, watch out for that. Just because we don't want our feature to have, 50 million dependencies. Or, in some cases, I might have a module installed that provides a widget, and if that module is a dependency of my feature, then if in the future I need to disable that module for some reason, it's automatically going to disable your feature too, which isn't so nice. So I like to make sure that my dependencies that I'm pulling in are actual hard dependencies. Okay, so just a few other things too. You notice that making this feature was really, really easy. All I had to do was literally one click, and features just went through it, blew through the entire thing and captured everything. And that's because I built it in a way that I refer to as vertical. All right, so when you think about it, you can make your features be anything that you want. So I actually used to do this in the past, where I'd have one feature module for everything on the site, everything, in this one gigantic bloated module, and that's a horrible idea. Very, very bad idea. Do not do that. So what you want to do is you want to isolate the things that you want to include in your features modules. All right, so these are logical pieces of your site, like, oh, the blog. In this case, oh, the announcements. All right, and how do you determine this? Well, it's up to you. It's just whatever is conceptually solid enough. Whatever is conceptually the most simple and clear-cut way to define these different features is going to be the best way to go. It's always better, I've found, to start with something concrete, like a content type. That's like I look at that as being sort of the beginning of a feature is going to be your content type, and you build it up vertically from that content type. There's another strategy too, which is pretty bad, where you can do it horizontally, right? You could say, oh, I'm going to have this feature be all of my content types, and then I'm going to have this feature be all of my fields, and I'm going to have this feature, and that's pretty much a horrible way to do it. I mean, that's akin to having one gigantic feature, except it's broken up into a bunch of smaller features, which are equally bad. So I don't know. Does anyone here build up horizontally?
I build features the same way as you, but I would definitely say that your opinion that vertical is good and horizontal is bad is not a universal opinion. There are people who do horizontal and feel strongly about it. And
yeah, I'll say that the original idea of features module was what you're talking about, bundling complete functionality, like a photo gallery feature that you can distribute to multiple sites. And people quickly realized, oh, but we can use this for deploying all the configuration for an entire site, which is a different problem space that Drupal 8 solves in its own way, where configuration is put into files and you can deploy an entire site's configuration. Features got roped into solving that problem for Drupal 6 and 7, because Drupal 6 and 7 didn't have an answer to that problem. And if all you're using features for is dumping all of your configuration and pushing it up, I think it matters less how well they're organized, because ultimately, like, there's probably going to be at least one circular dependency in there. If it's one circular dependency or 100, it's still a blob of configuration.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like, if you're doing this only for the purpose to make a workflow, I personally think it's acceptable to do the horizontal thing. And actually, Will Long made a module, I can't remember what it's called, but it will like basically automatically generate all of these horizontal features for you. You just say like go, and it has a series of rules that says one feature will have all your views, and one feature will have all your content, and it has like a whitelist, blacklist thing to make sure you don't get any variables that should never be in a feature. Anyway, it's a tool to say like I only want features to do my workflow stuff, and like screw the original intent of features. and it works. It gets the job done.
Yeah.
So
okay, so there is apparently some good use case for horizontal feature. You know, I don't want to burn up a whole lot of time here, so just to keep it simple, you know, if you've never used features before, I'd recommend starting it out and just basing it off of content types. That's a really simple and logical way to start, I guess, until you decide exactly how you want to use features. Also, watch your dependencies, and I would say try not to have features depend on other features. I try to make mine standalone, as standalone as possible, and really winnow down these dependencies as much as possible. And I've found that to be really successful. All right, so that's enough talk. Let's download this feature, fire it up, and show you how it works. So we download. And we wait. All right, so now I will go over to my sites directory. Let's see. To sites, all modules. Okay, so here's my downloads folder, and here is my features module that I've just downloaded. So it's a tar file exactly as if you download a module from Drupal.org. So you just go ahead and throw that into sites all module and uncompress. Okay, great. So there is our announcements module. And we simply go to the modules list, and we just enable it as if it was any other module.
Can you install it like any other module?
Absolutely. So here we go. We're at the module list. And again, we have these groups down the side, and that was that package field when we were making our feature. And okay, so my custom package, there appears, and announcements we will turn on. Okay, it is done. Feature is active, or will be active.
Are you on the same site or just a different site?
Yeah, same site.
Okay.
So yeah, after you export the code, it literally is a Drupal module. It is a module. I mean, it's.
But since it's the same site, weren't all those same modules there? In other words, aren't you just putting in the same modules that already?
Yeah, exactly. So now, and I wanted to show you this. So now, what I've done is I've captured all that stuff that I pointed and clicked on and just put it into code. But other than that, I actually haven't done anything to this site. All right.
So just clarifying, he's asking. So the stuff was all in the database, or some of it was.
Mm-hmm.
You exported it, you made a module, and then you install it back to the same place.
Mm-hmm.
But is it exported, or did it remove it from the database and put it in the module?
It did not remove it.
Twice?
It did not remove it from the database.
So there's two instances of it on the same site?
it's basically just reasserting this configuration, like it's making this configuration happen, and it happens that that configuration was already there. So that the net result is nil, but which I think Raphael is going to show next is once it's enabled on your site, you can make further changes and then pull them back into that module. And in order to do that, the module has to be enabled. So that's why we're enabling this module on a site that already has that configuration.
Yeah, and this is exactly what features is meant to do, is manage that weird, janky region between code and stuff in your database. So features is the mediator that sorts out all this different stuff and figures out if what you have in code matches what you have in the database and how to deal with that whole thing. So let's take a trip back to the features UI. Okay, so now we see that my custom package group is enabled. Okay, and there's my feature. And we see here it is in state default. So default means that what's in your database or what's in your actual site, it features looks at it and says, hey, that's the same as what's in code. And says, it's good, it's default. Now, I believe this is getting into more of what Steve wants to show you. But I'm just going to really quickly show you what happens when you change things on your site and how those changes show up in features. All right, so let's go back to my content type. I'm going to go into announcement and into manage fields. Or actually, how about we go into that view? We'll change our view.
I don't think we put the view in the feature though. I think you forgot to do that.
I did forget to do that. Okay, so I guess we are editing content type then. We'll go announcement, manage fields, and I'll just add a field to it. My new field. Field type, I'll just say it is a decimal field. Okay, and we'll just blow through the settings because we don't really care right now. Okay, so I have now made a change to this content type. The change that I made exists only inside the database of my Drupal site, Code, which means they're different. So if we go into features and we refresh this page, and we look at our features module.
Since that field wasn't in there in the first place.
Oh,
like change the label on one of the other fields or something like that.
So it's not going to notice if you're adding something new.
There we go. We'll change that.
Yeah, like the field portable thing. So
okay.
it's not that this feature was overridden because it didn't have that.
That's important also, that field is not in there. You'd have to go in and add it in.
I think when Raphael re-exports, features will pick up the fact that this export includes everything, this content type, and will then attempt to re-export everything.
Yeah,
for the
so this is a good
content
point
type.
actually. So right now we're showing it's overridden, which means that what we have in the database doesn't match what we have in code. And a good point here is that that field doesn't yet exist in code, so it wouldn't know that it's been overridden, which is why it wasn't showing up before. So now that I made a change to the things that are actually included in the code, we can see here that this feature is overridden. So here we can do a couple things. I can go and I can recreate it. So let's say that I want that new field and that new label to go back in the code.
What caused the change of state to overridden?
Me changing
one of the properties of the.
Yeah, so
the fact that you added one, you changed one of the existing properties that were in the feature.
exactly. So this field, had a label which I exported to features, and then I changed that.
Right.
And so now it's detecting that change.
So who's going to talk about synchronization for these two guys? Is that Steve? Are you gonna talk
That's
about
more Steve's domain.
Yeah.
So I'll wait for those questions.
Okay.
Okay. So it's overridden, and you can go two ways here. So I clicked on recreate, and now we can see that this is where it detects that that new field has been added to that content type. So if this is a case where I'm building new stuff, and I want to deploy that new stuff in code, all I have to do, and in fact this will be a good time to get that view in. Let's see.
Michelle says you're no longer presenting on the Hangout.
That's not good.
That is no good. You appear to be disconnected from the Hangout.
Well,
Your computer does not like Google. It likes the projector, though.
I have to pick that's what I pick.
We'll have to start linking all the computers together on the screen.
my theory is that it has Wi-Fi issues.
Could be.
All stuff is due to bandwidth.
I had a lot.
Sometimes,
Last time I had Wi-Fi issues.
Good to go.
For whatever reason, I don't know. My computer seems to like the Wi-Fi, but it hates that projector.
Do you
Yeah.
reconnect? I have some problems sometimes when I'm at Collectivo. The reconnect isn't set, so if it drops, it doesn't
Yeah.
try to reconnect, and then you're sort of sitting there dumb and stupid. Which it happens.
All right, so let's take a 2-minute break. I just do my Google Drive. Next, the internet, yes I am. Okay, so I will,
Just reload that page, I think.
yes.
Oh man, we gotta figure this out sometime.
Oh, there it is.
Nice.
Oh, yeah.
That was pretty quick.
Is there a way to get a dedicated computer here? You can,
Well, it just seems like something different breaks every time.
that's what I mean, having it set up on a computer here that people just bring their thumb drive up there.
Sure, I mean, we could use one of these computers. The thing is, like, my computer normally works fine, but, like, I connected it to the projector today and it was like Alice in Wonderland. Like, what was that about? So, like, I don't know. Even a dependable computer that's worked before has decided today to not work, so who knows?
Okay, so hopefully after doing that, I should appear on Google Hangouts pretty soon. But anyways, I've only got about a minute or two left anyway. So we just went over re-exporting your feature. So here I've made changes, and now I've re-exported them back into my features module. And now if I just pasted that over the top of my old module and went back to that features page, then it would show that it's back in default, because now my code finally matches the database.
Can you show the button under Advanced Options? Do you see the field set Advanced Options on the left? So there's a
version control, I imagine?
Yeah.
Okay, because this is troubling.
So here, if you didn't want to go through the whole dance of downloading again, there's this Generate Feature button that if your web server is configured in a very dangerous way that you should only ever do on a development site, it will just directly write the feature rather than you having to download it.
Yeah, so here I've been using download feature, but there is also a generate feature, which does the same thing, except it actually does paste it over the top of that module for you, which could save you a few steps.
Yeah, so if you're running on like MAMP or Aquadev Desktop, that button will totally work. On an actual web server, it shouldn't work, and if it does, you need to talk to your hosting provider.
All right, so the last thing I want to go over here, I'm going to click on Overridden, and this is going to, oh, that reminds me, I want to, diff. I do want to show you diff, if I can download it quickly. Alright, so that's thinking. Alright, so I've clicked on Overridden, and now Features is going to show me everything that's been overridden. So here's all the things that the database and the code don't match up. So here you can see here's a field instance that doesn't match, and this would be that label that I added, and something on the announcement type. And if we install the diff module, so the diff is also something that I install with Features tons of times. That gives us this review overrides tab, and this will actually show you like exactly what has changed down to like, the smallest details. So we were just looking at the general override screen, which says like, oh yeah, something in this field was changed or something in this view was changed. And if we install the diff module, we can go into review overrides here. And now I can see, yes, we have a new dependency, we have a new field, we have a new label, and you can see exactly what's changed. So I think that's a pretty basic rundown of how Features works, and a good concept of it, and I think it should give you enough info to at least begin using it somewhat intelligently.
Thank you.
Now we're going to hand things off to Steve. He's going to do some more workflow stuff.
Yeah.
Should I detach all my stuff?
Yes.
So what was the,
You gotta connect to the Hangout so I can share your screen.
Yes.
so real quick, and you had
You need the dongle.
that example that came with Features that migrate was missing.
Mm-hmm.
Is that not needed for Features then?
I think that's actually an example that came with the migrate module. Or maybe it was a
Features. I
features.
just downloaded
Okay.
it too. So.
Okay, so then yeah, I guess you would need migrate to test the feature.
It's not dependent.
Mm-hmm. You could just
There's no functionality.
right.
And finally, my beer. I exit.
All right. I'll get set up here. So I'm going to be building on what Raphael was showing as far as updating an existing feature. And then I'll be showing pushing that features change up from my local site to a shared testing site, and finally to a live site. Michelle, can you hear me? Should I be unmuted here, or should I be trying to talk into you?
She gave us the thumbs up.
Thumbs up?
Yeah, I think we're good.
All right, cool. I'll leave myself muted then, and I'll get a screen share going. And looks like the projector is just working. Great. All right, so first, what's the site that we're looking at? Nerdalogs.com. This is a sketch comedy group that I was a part of in Chicago. I've stayed involved since moving up from Chicago, maintaining the website and doing anything else I can with them. So the sort of configuration that I'm going to be changing for this demo is the number of videos that show on a bio page. And coincidentally, this is a picture of me from the Milwaukee Comedy Festival, I think in 2012, something like that. So on our nerd bio pages, we show videos and then podcast clips that we're involved in. And earlier today, while testing out this demo, I changed the number of videos that shows from 3 to 2. I'm going to change it back from 2 to 3 through features module, pushing up that change from my local environment to a dev environment to a test environment to finally this live site. So just to get the lay of the land, we've got nerdalogs.com, the live site. There are other domains, dev.nerdalogs.pantheon.com, a shared development site, test.nerdalogs.pantheon.com, a testing site. We've got a local site, nerdalogs.local. So that's maybe one environment too many, at least when it's a one-man band, just a personal site that I'm maintaining. But having this many separate environments is a lot more beneficial when you have multiple developers involved, when you have clients involved. So a couple of environments involved. Other things involved, GitHub. GitHub.com is where I host the entire Git repository. And what we see in the Git repository, the Git root is the Drupal.root. There's index.php right there. Everything needed for Drupal to run is fully committed to this site, with the exception of things like, the settings file where the database credentials are, or user uploaded files and pictures. That doesn't get fully version controlled, but all my custom modules, features, Drupal core, contrib modules, it's all version controlled together in one big repo. And Michelle's going to be talking about an alternate way about thinking of structuring how you version control things. This is one standard way to do it. Just throw it all in one big Git repo. Make the Git root your doc root, and that's what Pantheon expects. So Pantheon is the hosting company. And I should mention that the company that I work for, Palantir.net, is a Pantheon partner, and I think through a developer program I get the $25 a month plan for free to host nerdalogs.com. Just want to make those disclaimers, but I'm not here on their behalf. I just like their hosting and wanted to talk about it because it is a pretty easy way to get the dev test live workflow for as little as $25 a month. So this is the Pantheon dashboard. I'm logged in here. I can see information about my dev environment, my test environment, my live environment. With each one, I can see things like backup information. I could back up all of the code, the database, the files for each of these environments. I can see a history of Git commits that are present on each environment. So right now, all three line up because right now there are no pending changes that need to get moved up that chain. As David was talking about, earlier, we're pushing code up from local to dev to test to live, and the database is coming down. So if, for instance, I needed to start fresh, what I would do is probably go to that live environment and click download on the database and files and bring them down. Pantheon also has a bunch of command line tools if you want to use automation of some kind or do everything command line to bring down the database and such. So before I get into demoing, making a configuration change, any questions yet about just the basics of what we're doing here?
You just to confirm, you have your dev, test, and live all in Pantheon?
Yeah. So you sign up for Pantheon and you just get that all together. I think even you can sign up for a free account and get just the dev environment.
You get all three.
Oh, you get all three?
For up to 5 seconds.
Great. This has been hosted there for about 2 years. And it works.
Sorry, you install the roots files on Git for version control.
Yes, and Pantheon, the way you get your files to Pantheon, you can get them up to Pantheon through FTP. SFTP is a preferred way. So that that big Git repo, that repo is on my local environment. It's on GitHub. It's on Pantheon. I still use GitHub just because I like it as a place to host my code, even though it is just me. I was surprised to realize I've made 26 pull requests to myself on this repository. Pull requests are a way usually for multiple developers to collaborate on code changes. I'll use them just to keep track of what I'm doing, and I'll make a pull request as part of the demo. So Pantheon does give you a Git repository that is the way you interact with the code, but I still like to have my code also hosted on GitHub because they have, GitHub has a bunch of tools specific for managing changes to code. Pantheon is a place to deploy the changes once you've made them. Though at higher tiered plans, there's this multi-dev environment that's more geared around multiple developers deploying different branches to different test environments. Here for this basic workflow, it's the master branch going up through all these environments. All right, so on my local site, nerdalogs.local, again, what we're changing is the number of videos that show on profile pages from 2 to 3. So this is a change that is set in panels configuration. It is a view, and the number of items per page is configurable at the pane level. So I'm just going to change that from 2 to 3. Update. So it's been saved. So to keep track of where is it? It was in code, and it still is in code. By saving it, I've saved it to the database. So the database is now overriding what's in code. The database says 3 items per page. The code says 2 items per page, right now anyway. And I'm going to update the code so that they say the same thing. So Raphael was showing the UI for using features module. I like the command line tool. What I'm running right now is drush features update, and then the name of the feature, custom features node page. We could probably do an hour just on features naming strategies, along with, do you have vertical features or horizontal features? How do you name your features? I prefix them all with custom, at least on this project I did. Sometimes it's like name of client. This could have been Nerdalogs features node page. So that feature module was just updated inline. So the only 2 changes are the Unix timestamp that gets put into the info file and the items per page has changed from 2 to 3. That's it. So git status, I'm on the master branch. The only 2 files that have changed are that info file and that configuration file. To show the GitHub side of it, I'll make myself a pull request. So I'm going to check out a different branch. I'll call it videos number of items. So I'm now on a branch that's identical to master, but as soon as I commit this change, it'll be 1 commit different. So I'm going to push that up to Pantheon. Sorry, first push it to GitHub.
So the first diff is between the module and the Git repository?
The diff that we just saw was between the master branch.
No, before you did that. You did that after you made the change, you did a diff and you found the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the comparison for the diff?
I'm not sure I follow.
So you have a module that's sitting on it and it had 2 in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You changed it.
Yep.
So you changed, I'm assuming you changed the module from 2 to 3.
Yes.
And then you ran a diff on it and it's figured out that there was 2. Where did it find the 2? Because it's not going to find the 2 in the...
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It found the 2 in the .git directory. So,
okay. So it is... Okay.
Yeah. The way Git works is with a hidden .git directory that I cannot explain.
It has all the old revisions. That's really all you need to know. It's that this hidden Git directory has all the old revisions. When he says git diff, it's comparing what he has on disk with what was the last thing in the repo.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just magic, basically.
Mm-hmm. Magic.
So, okay. So the diff module always works with Git and some instance of a file that you have on your...
Well, he was using Git directly, the Git command line tool, so git diff.
Mm-hmm.
The
Raphael ran diff.
Right, so Raphael did a slightly different thing. He was showing the diff module, which is comparing the configuration in the Drupal database to the configuration in the code in the module.
And the diff module is a Drupal module.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So it shows up
separate
in the
things.
Drupal interface,
Mm-hmm.
whereas Steve's doing it in Git.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. The diff that I was showing was in Git, and now we're seeing the diff on GitHub. The diff between.
And it's just a little joke that they're both called diff.
It's
yeah.
just typical name for the way it's doing.
Right.
Yeah.
All languages have this.
Yeah, just showing the difference between 2 things. So this is a pretty simple diff. I'm going to merge my own pull request.
But like on a real development team, like one person has permission to merge pull requests and then the rest of the team is creating them.
Yeah, each team has their own rules about who can merge pull requests and when. On the project I'm on right now, it's somewhat of a taboo to merge your own pull request. I think we're now up to 750 pull requests in total over the life of the project, and I would guess that 5% were merged by the person who wrote them, maybe less. I hope less.
It's to encourage like code review, that another member of the development team looks it over first and then they merge it.
Yeah, there are some things like literal typo fixes where I'll be comfortable merging my own pull request if it's an obvious typo fix and it's a 1-line change. If it's something more complex, and how much more complex, we'll let you figure out with your team. So here, I'm a 1-man team. I've merged my own pull request. I'll delete that branch. Now, again, to keep track of all of our environments, we've got my local, we've got GitHub, and we have Pantheon. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to get it onto Pantheon. So to get it onto Pantheon, what I need to do is git push it to Pantheon. So that change is now in the master branch. I'm going to switch back to the master branch locally. It's complaining because I'm in the wrong terminal window. We'll switch back to the master branch in the correct terminal window. I'm going to pull down that change from GitHub, that merge that I just made to the GitHub user interface. I'm now going to push that to Pantheon. And as soon as I push it to Pantheon, or nearly as soon as I push it to Pantheon, this dev environment is getting automatically updated with the push that I made. So the test and the live environment, I need to directly say, move that code onto the test environment or onto the live environment now. Whereas the dev environment has more of an automated process where as soon as something is pushed to Pantheon, it's immediately deployed to the development environment. So I think what that means is if I clear caches on the development environment, I should see 3 videos over here. I'm seeing different fonts because of an unrelated bug related to URLs. But yeah, we can see that pull request merge is the most recent thing on dev. So I should be able to refresh this now and see 3 videos. 1, 2, 3, hooray! Exciting. So the test environment. Here's where we need to deliberately say, deploy this code now. And again, code is getting pushed up, files and database are coming down. So that's what we're seeing in these checkboxes. You know, do you want to pull files and database from the live environment? Do you want to pull that stuff down while pushing this code up? Yes, I do. Yes, I do want to do that. And I want to clear caches, run update.php. I could uncheck that because I haven't added any update functions. All I've done is change to the 3 message here. Changing 2, 2, 3, 4, bio, page, videos. This will take some number of seconds, maybe upwards of a minute, to copy that database, sync down any files, as well as push up the code. But as soon as that's done, and hooray, it's done. We should now see it here on the test domain. No. Do I need to clear? That's not good.
First thing, clear caches.
Clear caches. Something's wrong. Clear caches.
Looks like it's still finishing the first.
Oh, maybe.
It had a 2 up there.
Oh, running update.php. See, I should have unchecked that because I knew I wasn't.
That's gonna take
I knew I wasn't doing any update
extra
function.
30 seconds.
Taking a screenshot. That's a new thing.
Does Pantheon not put your site into maintenance mode when you do an update? Because that would be useful.
I may have refreshed it at the moment it was dropping the database and replacing it with live database. I don't know. But hey, we're now seeing 3 again.
So then on a real project, like what happens when the code goes to test?
On a real project, I would then probably notify the client saying, this thing is now in the test environment. Check it out, verify that there are 3 things. On a real project, there would probably be a lot more changes to review, something much more complex. So each project would have its own set of tests to run, either automated or manual, its own decision process for when is it okay to then go from test to live. Some amount of time, some set of tests that need to pass before you can go from test to live. And Pantheon makes it really easy to make a backup before doing live deployments, which is always a good idea. I'm not going to do that because I did it earlier this afternoon.
I have a question for a multi-developer project.
Mm-hmm.
Who approves the feature set for the test environment? Who does that? I mean, do you have somebody who does that for you?
On the project I'm on right now, there's a dedicated QA person.
So they're the one matching the feature set, the release feature set with the test environment. So they're pulling the feature set to the test environment and testing based on the feature set.
Yeah, they look at what's supposed to be in this new tag, this new deployment to test, verify that it's there, verify that.
So then they create the release tag for the.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what's happening under the hood. You know, I'm just clicking buttons here, but on a Git level, Pantheon is creating Git tags for every time I click this deploy button. And again, you can use command line tools and make tags directly and do it in such a way that it will deploy instantly to live. For me, being one person managing a relatively small site, I just use the buttons. But on a new laptop, I decided I need to get a better workflow in my local environment, so I'm now learning more about Pantheon's command line tool that will automatically download the database. So I now have a script that will take the lab vagrant environment and make me a Nerdlog's local environment by downloading the files, downloading the database, all through Pantheon's command line tools. So I'll now deploy this to live. I'm not going to run update.php because there are no update functions to be run in this change.
What might be interesting sometimes is to talk to the front side of the workflow before it gets to dev, because that's sometimes a big problem too.
The requirements and project management stuff?
Yeah, well, it's the bug tracking, fixing, creating the feature set, the whole process, because sometimes that could be a problem before it gets to dev. But you generally have more stuff than you have time, and somebody's got to sort of, I don't know how to say this, vet the stuff that's coming in, making sure that it's okay, make sure you have enough requirements before you actually push it to dev to either assess or do something with it. And that the tools for that are important. Not for one guy, but as soon as you get more than one.
Yeah, having a larger set of developers changes everything. Yeah. So here we are on the live site, nerdlogs.com, 3 videos. So a change made locally through the UI, exported to a pre-existing feature, committed to Git, pushed to GitHub, merged on GitHub, pushed to Pantheon, and then dev, test, live, all through the Pantheon UI.
So I have a question for you on is dev and your local, are they equivalent? So, I mean, the whole point of test is it exposing it to the normal environment. So when you go to dev and test, neither one of them is live. So the work you're doing in dev, is that just a branch, or is that working on the whole thing?
For my own usage of this site, I'd be fine with 2 Pantheon environments instead of one. I think one of the reasons dev is there is that there are tools that allow you to edit code directly in this dev environment, which would allow you to do some kind of work without any local environment whatsoever. I don't want to work like that. I want to work locally, and then for me, like, having dev and test for this particular site, kind of redundant and almost an annoyance to have both, because really I just want to make sure it works locally, make sure it works on Pantheon before it's public, and then making it public. So for me, right now, dev and test are basically serving the same function. If it were a more robust team, it would be that dev is the thing that's getting pushed to all the time. It might be broken at any one moment, and test is the more stable thing that's client-facing that they see before it goes public. But for me, like, I am my own client, and if it is broken on dev, well, I'll be the only one to catch it.
The other question I had for you was you went through the Drush, well, all of the Drush code pretty quick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can go
pretty quick.
Sure.
Without going into it, and some of these things are like kind of some cheat sheets out there, but I don't know if they're particular to Pantheon. And
sure. What I did is Drush related, was not Pantheon specific at all. One cheat sheet you could do is just Drush help and look at all the features related Drush commands. So there's adding, listing all components, basically anything you can do in the features UI you can do on the command line. One of my favorites is Drush FC, features components for listing all components. Raphael had that big set of checkboxes. This is the equivalent set of data through the command line. So for instance, all of those field instances you can work with in the command line as well.
Probably the two most used of those commands is the FU and FR. Mm-hmm. Like what he did earlier was FU features update, which takes what's in code and just overwrites your module. And then the other end of that is features revert, or FR, which takes what's in your code and overwrites the database. So like, let's say you made a bunch of changes in the site, like pointing and clicking, and you didn't want those, you want to go back to what was in the features, you could do drush FR, name of the feature. Or if you're updating the code to later deploy, drush FU feature name to pull into code.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, are we ready for Michelle?
I think we are. Let me mess with audio. Are you going to do it from there? Otherwise, I was going to mute this and then, well, yeah, let's just try that. We'll try yours first and we'll see if that works.
Is your audio?
Away from the speakers.
All right. Michelle, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Great. You are big brother up on the projector.
Oh no! Look at who's here? Is it just you, Steve? You and Dave?
Me.
Hey. Oh great. I can hear myself talking. I'll slowly go crazy. It'll be like a bell jar, like a one-woman show of the bell jar. So it'll be fun. So you can hear me, okay? Right? All right. And Steve, you'll let me know if anyone's like falling asleep or great. Okay. So I'm going to talk to you today about Composer. For anyone who wants to follow along at home and take a nap or something, take a look at this later. If you go over to GitHub on my personal repository over at Drupal Adonis, I'm looking at the Meetup Milwaukee Composer branch. And this is the repository I'll be referring to, and this is my agenda for today. So you can take a look, and that's exactly the code base I'm looking at and pushing to. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me. I know it's super weird and awkward to have a remote person, so thank you for accommodating me. My name's Michelle. I'm a Palantir over at palantir.net. Here's how to find me. So here's the agenda. And Steve, actually, I had planned for a sort of an interactive version of it, so I don't mind going insane for a little bit. I'll let you know when that interaction happens. But I want to say something about Drush Make. But first, here's a little introduction to the problem. So what we've heard from David, what we've heard from Raphael, and what we've heard from Steve a little bit here, is the conceptual separation of what it means to build your thing versus the content that lives on your thing that's managed with your configurations. So a lot of the work of exporting the configurations that manage the content and getting that into code has been demonstrated with features here. I'm not offering an alternative here. I want to be clear. I'm offering an addition because features, strong arm, that workflow, that's a well accepted process moving forward. So there's nothing controversial here. This is well accepted. It's in Drupal 8 core. So if this is presented in any way as an alternative to that, that's not the case. This is a addition to this. And the addition here is that within the repositories, particularly the repository that Steve just showed, he is committing Drupal contrib modules, including Drupal itself, into his repository. So I'm looking here at my repository. I do not actually have Drupal core itself inside my repository, nor do I have any contrib modules. Instead, what I have is a reference to those modules. I have a reference to the admin module and Drupal itself and the module filter. So this single file, as well as the lock file, is what is managing my dependencies. So within my repository itself, what my repository contains is my custom modules inside here, my custom themes inside here, and some testing and build instructions. So everything in here can build the Drupal root, but it's not any Drupal-related contributed modules that I don't want to touch, because you don't hack core and you don't hack a contributed module. Those are dependencies of your project rather than part of your project itself. So why carry around something in your repository that you're not supposed to touch? Steve, is it looking like everyone's more or less understanding what I'm saying in terms of the problem? Anyone understanding the problem?
Maybe she just wants to unmute.
Michelle, right after you cut out, so I didn't hear the question.
Oh, yikes. So the question here, good. Hopefully this will be like, I'll drop out at really critical moments through the whole presentation, but my question was looking for an acknowledgement that the problem was made clear, if anyone has any questions about the problem.
I think so. Everybody get the basic idea of committing everything versus committing a reference. Yes.
Okay. So here I have to make an obligatory nod to Drush Make, which has been previously the solution to solving this problem. I need to tell you right now that I cannot give you a fair overview of what Drush Make is. I will only sound like a hired propagandist gun looking to undermine Drush Make. So I cannot give you a very fair rendering of Drush Make. In fact, Matt was supposed to present on Drush Make before I was, and I was really ready to sort of come in guns blazing and tear apart everything he said about Drush Make. So I feel like I have to actually make some sort of polite nod to Drush Make, which is a really, accepted way to manage this problem. It's at least an acknowledgement of this problem. So actually, Steve, if you wouldn't mind, I'm not going to ask you as many questions as I thought I was going to, but in 1 minute, because I'm hearing my echo, I don't want to talk to you too much, but could I hand this off to you? Could you just in 1 minute explain what drush-make is and why you use it.
Sure. So drush-make is a standard for writing a file to list Drupal dependencies. So you list that your project depends on the views module and the specific version of views module and ctools module and the specific version of ctools. You can specify things like version numbers, install locations, like I want to install this module at sites all modules contrib. And Michelle, I'll say it in my experience with drush-make, which is about 2 projects, I have not found it to I've not found its benefits to outweigh the pain that I've had from working with it. I think that the sales pitch of drush-make is essentially only version control the references to your dependencies. You don't need to version control all of views, simply version control that you need views. Makes sense, cool. In my experience, the building of the makefile, the downloading of all the dependencies is time-consuming enough that I don't like it, that I would rather just commit everything. And while it can be mentally taxing to commit everything, to keep track of how everything is committed, to keep track of patches, drush-make, I think, is a cleaner way of managing patches, because you just say, I need views module and I need this patch to views module. That's it. Whereas if you're doing what I'm doing with nerdlogs.com, you're committing everything, it may be harder to see what's patched and what's not.
And doing updates, like if you have views plus a patch, and then you go to the next version of views, you have to make sure to reapply your patch afterwards.
Exactly, and that can be painful. However, in my experience, the time spent build drush-make makes me think, it's not so bad to just commit everything. But Composer.
That was longer than a minute, Steve.
I know it was. Sorry.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. So that wasn't quite a fair shake at drush-make either, but my intention is to incite violence at the end, so mission accomplished, hopefully. So I'm gonna just dive in with the demo actually, and then I'm going to sort of give you a tour, because actually Composer is being really slow for me this evening, which is embarrassing since I'm trying to convince you that it's the better way. So how awkward is that? It looks like it's not showing the right screen. Let me. Okay. Hopefully, so we're looking at the command line. Don't be afraid. I have separated my screen into two different sessions. They're the same. They're the same repository here. This is over here. I'm in Mac land. Up here, I'm in Ubuntu land. I'm just working in a virtual machine. So you can see there's a Vagrant file in my repository. That's all that is. I need to be inside this Ubuntu land to show you some to actually bootstrap Drupal. So that's the conceptual configuration here. All right, we're gonna look at my my Composer JSON. Here it is. I have very few things in my Composer JSON. So let's just go ahead and add features, because we've all agreed that that features is needed. I'm adding this as a dependency, and now I need to update Composer. So I'm going to run Composer update, and we're going to wait a second for this to update. While it's doing that, a little bit about my directory structure. So you'll see that within my repository, I do have something called dub. So inside dub, I have my Drupal root. So if you're looking at my repository on GitHub, which is where I have my agenda, if you're looking at that repository, you see that I have not committed dub. In fact, I've explicitly not included dub within my repository. I am only using dub as a local artifact to work on building. I'm going to explain this in a second. But first, we can all be satisfied here that the features has been enabled. If you're not satisfied, you shouldn't be. No one should be satisfied. I'm going to go here and enable features. It's successfully enabled. You're probably wondering what the site looks like. This is Adonis over here. We could log in, ensure that features is there, and in fact it is. Great. So let's install something else a little bit more complicated, and let's install it the Composer way, which should be Composer require Drupal Panoply. There we go. There we go. This is going to take a hell of a long time to download, because what Composer is going to do is it's going out and not only downloading Panoply for me, but it's going to get all of Panoply's dependencies. And then it's going to get those dependencies. And turns out Panoply has a lot of dependencies and dependencies of dependencies. So with this one command, Drupal require Panoply, it's not just going to get me Panoply. It's going to get me a whole hell of a lot of things. Here they come now, all of the things that Panoply comes with. Oh my gosh, here they come. Uh-oh, we had a problem downloading this from source, so it's found it in another place. Which is, I'm not going to get into this too much. Everyone's going to have a chance to learn Composer really well when we get into Drupal 8, any minute now. Any minute we'll be doing Drupal 8. But here we go, all the things. Oh my god. All the stuff. All right, so all of these Panoply files have just been downloaded for me over inside vendor. Under Drupal. There we go. All of Panoply is now over in Drupal, and it's all been symlinked in my. I'm going to use Drupal land here. Let's see. It's all been symlinked inside my my www directory. I can speak a little bit more to how I'm building this directory, since Composer downloads everything in vendor. I am not expecting in one evening to convert everyone into this workflow. There's a lot to learn here. So really my intention here is to introduce you to the idea and to give you some resources and a sandbox if you wanna play with this. But I wanna say here that Composer is installing Drupal dependencies in a vendor directory, which means in this vendor directory I'm not version controlling at all. Again, the only thing that I'm version controlling, if we go back to my my GitHub repository, the only thing that I am version controlling, right, you baby. Sorry, the only thing that I'm version controlling is my my Composer JSON and my Composer lock, not my vendor, not my www. So all of these Drupal dependencies live over in vendor. I'm using something called Drupal Tangle, which I'll give direct credits for at the end here, to build my www directory. I want to talk a little bit more about the conceptual implications of this, but again, I'd like to stress for you that the Drupal root artifact, which has, for many of you, been the product of modules that you're downloading either through Drush download or by tarballing something and putting together a Drupal root and committing that full Drupal root. I'm telling you that what's, because you're only really customizing a very small portion of that, which should be anything in your custom directory within sites all for the most part. That's the only bit that's custom, and that should be full of features, it should be full of your custom modules, and since that's the only part of the project that really is customizable, that's really you, that and its dependencies, Composer really forces this conceptual shift, this way of thinking about your project as it's a particular configuration, like a particular set of requirements with some modules installed. So let me go back here. If you look at my Drupal root, it really is its own sort of manifesto, in that I'm only including things that build my site rather than my site itself. I want to show you that that Composer can elegantly handle removing requirements. So in my Composer, I've only installed Panoply. Even though it installed all of its dependencies here, I've only required Panoply. So if I remove Panoply, it should, I know, I do this all day long. I WQ all of my stuff. Okay, if I remove Panoply and now I run Composer update, it's going to remove all of those modules. I'm really not picking on you, David. Panoply is a beautiful distribution. It's going to remove all of Panoply's modules from my repository, and it's going to rebuild dub. Right. So on the rebuilding dub, I'm doing it differently than the documentation on D.O. There it is, removing all of dub. I'm removing all of the documentation, or I'm building dub with something called Drupal Tangler, which I invoke inside a post install. So essentially, I'm invoking a script that symlinks all of this together, and like pieces together all of my requirements after Composer update runs or after Composer require runs. This is not the necessarily recommended way. This is how I would, this is how I do it. This is how it works in my head. I have sort of particular reasons for wanting to do it this way, but I did link to some resources here. You should look at other ways of doing this, particularly the Drupal Composer project. They have a completely different conception of how to build Drupal root. In particular, they're using something called an installer path that specifies where you will be installing Drupal. So this literally installs Drupal in a particular place, which I'm not necessarily in favor of. But there you go. This is the documented Drupal.org way of doing it. So keep in mind that this is a very much evolving idea to use Composer in Drupal 7. This is very much the PHP way of doing things. And I want to prove to you that this worked by making a test. So I have a Travis instance on my local here. So Travis runs on every commit and just makes sure that I did what I said I was going to do. And I've added a test that sees if features is installed. So we just added, if we look at my diff, after moving some things around, in fact, the only requirement that we have added to this project is features. And so my addition to Travis here is going to just check if features was indeed installed. It's just going to fail if features isn't there. If you're not convinced of my my grepping abilities, there it is. If I ls the dub cites all modules contrib, and I'm looking for the features directory, it's going to pass if it's there. Now if I remove it, w cites all. Now if I run that same command, it'll fail. So that's my proof of concept. This is the test, and I'm a believer that if you cannot repeat your work somewhere else, then it's not done. So I'm going to add that. I'm going to add the Composer. All right, great. So let's make a So I've committed all my work into another branch, and now we're going to make a pull request of testing Composer into our meetup branch. No, that can't be true. How's that true? I didn't write a commit message. I'm sorry. Live demos, great. So actually, I haven't tested this yet. So hopefully, this fails catastrophically and is really embarrassing for me. So here I am. I've just made a pull request into my meetup branch, and this is running on Travis. I know this isn't a presentation about Travis, but Travis is an automation tool for running tests or deployments or anything else. It spins up another environment for you to test your stuff in. So while this is waiting, I'll just pull something up so we can take a look at it. Does anyone have any questions for me? Have I totally lost everyone, Steve? Is anyone in the room?
Yes. No one has stormed out in offense over your repository structure.
Whew. Okay. Does it look like maybe I've successfully incited a riot?
No riot yet. I'm trying to get my laptop turned around so you can see everybody.
Does Composer automatically take patches and apply them to the modules that it downloads?
Okay, I think I heard something about patches, and I'm guessing like that's a fair question. What are you going to do about patches, yo? Patches or libraries are another concern. All right, so in the resources that I gave you, they have a particular way of handling patches here. I guess a recommended way. This works fine, and I think that this is a fine path forward. And it does automatically install it to that Drupal ctool module, so it adds an addition to the ctools. This works great. I'd like to find another way to handle this, but for right now, this is how you do it. It's in the Composer JSON. You're modifying this particular version of ctools with this patch and this URL. Woohoo! Hey, look! My test passed. See, Composer worked. And yeah, it also ran this bhat test that just confirms that it installed correctly, so I didn't mess up my install. We've got Composer. Okay, so I just want to say one last thing, just to tie into what Steve was saying, and then if anyone else has questions about Composer. So from this, one of the reasons I actually am showing you Travis, and I'm showing you, here I have written tests that verify that I've actually built a thing, and of course for this test to pass, I've had to have successfully created a Drupal root. I can't bootstrap Drupal without Drupal and a Drupal root. So, this in and of itself is a test that you can build a project with Drupal. But what I want to say here is that my Drupal root, my www, is the deployable artifact now. There is a separation, and that I think Composer forces. There is this mental model of separating out how do you build Drupal from the end product that is production itself. If anyone has ever worked on Jekyll or Sculpin or have done any Symfony 2 work, a lot of other projects structure themselves this way. The production directory is an artifact of development rather than the upstream itself. So Composer, these are my 3 reasons for using Composer. 1, you are ready for Drupal 8. You have conceptually made that shift. 2, you're keeping up with the PHP community at large, which I think is always good. 3, you're not using Drush Make, and 4, you're beginning a revolution that Drupal needs to make, which is how we make Drupal is different than Drupal itself.
So I have a question. How do you
Yes.
manage the Drupal context? How do you figure out what version of Drupal you're using against your contributed elements?
How do I?
So here's the question. Lots of times a platform will introduce errors into your code, and unless you can track the version on which you're running, you have a difficult time tracking down where the problem might have occurred. So if you work with an operating system, you work with a version of the operating system, which is a defined context. And if things around that context change, the version of the operating system changes. So when you deploy your application on the operating system, you make sure that you're testing in the same context in which the problem occurred. You understand what I just said?
Yep, I do. Except I would say that I don't know if that's a composer-specific problem. The testing your stuff on the environment in which it's going to live is everyone's problem.
The composer is building the platform for me contributing a module.
So do you mean like the difference between specifying a specific, like I want Drupal core 7.35 rather than saying 7 star?
With module at this version, module this version.
Right. So I think that's up to you as you're writing the composer.json. So like in this example, she did all like 7.star, so like whatever the newest version is, right? But you could put specific versions with specific patches and commit that, so that when you go back to that specific version in your repo, it's like reproducibly exactly the same.
Michelle, could you talk about the composer lock file?
So that's it. The composer file is just another.
Right, it's another source in the Git repo, yeah.
I got it.
Oh, okay, yeah. So sorry, it's a little bit hard for me to hear other people in the room. So yes, you can specify very specifically what you want, or you just say, give me the latest. So Steve, you were asking to talk about composer lock?
Yes.
All right. So I was being pretty vague about composer install and composer update. Composer install, which is how your project should build, and how I'm building on Travis, on that automated deployment you just saw. Composer install builds from the lock file, so it pins down every version. So although I had 7.star, in the lock file, it stored a particular hash of features, a particular version. And so I'm planning on deploying with composer install. I'm not running composer update, which would give me the latest version of features, and then update the lock. So there is a workflow of who runs composer update and when do they run composer update. Because if you run composer update, if there's anything with a .star that's looking for give me whatever version, composer will automatically update that version for you unless you have pinned it down. So in summary, composer install installs from the lock file, which you can pin down. Composer update updates the lock file to the latest versions.
Can you show us the lock file? Is that even readable?
You tell me. Yeah, you could tell me. Sure. Okay. So how can I actually, let's do it this way. So this is the version of features. It's where it lives, its reference. If features was to update, and I were to run composer update, so let's say it went from 7.2.5 to 7.2.6, because I had that .star there in my composer JSON, running composer update would bump this version up and therefore bump my lock up. If I just run composer install, it'll install from this lock. So it'll always install this version.
So that is really cool. That is a concrete benefit over Drushmake because in Panoply, we have to do this dance where we are constantly updating our make file for like a new revision of Git or a new version of whatever. Whereas this kind of like, you have the lock file, which keeps that, but then you don't have to manually monkey around with that. That's super cool.
Why don't you? If it's like it's no free lunch. If you're going to specify, if you're going to specify that it's locked, when you want to change it, you're going to have to unlock it in order to update it, right?
Well, it's a different command.
Different command, but you still have it's still a two-step process. If I make a change and I want the change to reflect on the current release context, I have to modify the make file in order to, whether it's Composer or whatever, I have to modify it.
But with Composer, you just have to run Composer update, whereas with Drushmake, you need to go through every single one of Panoply's dependencies and say
manually what's the latest version. I have to copy that version into the .make file.
So are you saying the Composer automatically keeps track of that for you?
If you just want to go to the latest, it'll do that for you and update the lock file.
Oh, okay. Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
So the Drupal community has already had this conversation, which was before Drupal 8 came out, which is why Drupal 8 is being managed exactly this way. For the reason that David just stated there, like within Drupal itself, managing its dependencies and locking down a Composer lock is one of the reasons that this is the way that Drupal 8 is moving.
Very cool stuff. Are there any more questions?
Well, yeah, I have a question. One of the stuff that was said was the problem of separating the code from the content. I have been reading about workflow and I saw a format called XML. How was that related to this? If you were to, is it possible to output Drupal content in XML and separate content from presentation and code?
When it's a question about Drupal, the answer is always yes. Because you can do everything. Did you have something to say?
So you're talking about exporting content as XML?
Oh, you need to representing content as XML, so you separate content from code and presentation.
Yeah. The database ends up as like the canonical set of content. So yes, you can export your content through XML. You can do a database dump. The question becomes to what end? If the thing you want is to be able to edit your content locally and then like push it up to your live site the way you push up code, yes, there are ways to do that. They're painful to implement in Drupal currently, but there's a subset of the Drupal community who really wants to solve that problem well. The problem of I want to edit all of this content on one site, and then when it's all perfect, send it all live together at the same time. Like the company that I work for, like 6 years ago, wrote a module called Deploy for that use case. There's Foreign Affairs magazine. They release just a small set of issues per year, and they want to release the entire issue at the same time. And so they want to be able to edit and create all these nodes on a staging site, and then all at once push them to the live site, and bam, the new issue, the March issue, is all live all at once. So yes, there's a way to do it, but it's like people complain about features being complicated. That right now is super painful and super complicated to do. But I know at DrupalCon there will be presentations on how it's going to be easier in Drupal 8, because everything's going to be easier in Drupal 8, we think. We hope. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that module deploy was written for Drupal 6. I think it was rewritten for Drupal 7. I don't know if it actually got any easier in Drupal 7. But
Steve, you don't know this, but I'm actually implementing a deploy site right now.
What?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
It's really slick. It's great. It uses the REST server and services, and REST server has matured a lot in the last several years in Drupal 7, as well as services. And it's a little bit different than migration. Lowell? He's asking about the migration import. The migration imports content, SQL, CSV, XML into your site. What we're talking about here with deploy and content staging is literally having an entirely different Drupal site where you just add content, and then you specify, okay, I want all of this content to go live. So you just get it all set the way you want it. You press a button, and there it is over on your production site. So it's like having a standalone Drupal 7 site just to stage content, completely separate from your production site and all of its configuration.
And so that's like a really content staging, right? And that's content staging. There are simpler solutions to the same sort of general problem, like if you want to work on content in some kind of workflow and then publish it later. Like you don't necessarily have to have two separate sites for that. Like you could work on a bunch of content on your production site and just have it like not be published, or go through a set of workflow rules, like one person writes it, another person approves it, it's published. So there's a lot of solutions to working on things and then having them appear live later of varying degrees of complexity. And having, staging your content and pushing it up is probably the most complex way to do that. That helps.
So is it possible to build with Drupal a database that is in XML? Is that possible? To store your content in XML?
Everything.
Again, everything's possible.
Like
Drupal 7 has pluggable field storage. I don't know if anyone has written.
I guess the question is, why would you want to do that? Or that probably you want to do natively.
There's a concept create once, publish everywhere. One is what we're trying to do is we building like a publishing and use publishing site. So we need orders to be. So we need to create a file like a news article. And when we publish it, it can actually be read. It can be automatically transcribed to audio, or it can go automatically to apps and stuff like that. So,
so is this
the key concept was
the processing
XML.
problem, or is this a storage so that you can process?
It's more like a storage, database storage. If you can store it in XML, then you can publish it anywhere.
So you can do this without having XML be in the equation at all. I mean, so you could have like one Drupal site where you are writing your content, and then have that get distributed to all these other places through a variety of ways. And you don't need to have like a separate database or do anything with XML if you don't want to. I mean, certainly you could try to wedge any technology in there that you want.
Yeah,
but
you certainly can. I worked on a project a couple of years ago that wasn't specifically implementing that COPE strategy of create once, publish everywhere, but it was a model of networked sites. It was like regional sports sites where they all had exactly the same content types, and a news story about a basketball game could be written in Cleveland, published for Cleveland, and then Dallas could see that story and basically download it to their site. And XML was the tool used. It was hubbub. Isn't quite a protocol. It's more of a paradigm that Google, I think, was originally behind, that allows for different sites to be publishers and subscribers of each other's content. So the Cleveland site can publish the basketball story. Dallas can say, I want that, and I want any updates that you make. So yeah, XML is a way to do that concept.
But it doesn't mean you have to store the content.
It does, right? It does, right. So
that's the
yeah, XML was the transfer mechanism. Right. The content was still getting stored in Drupal MySQL databases. Yeah. Though now, I don't know. I probably would look at JSON as the transfer mechanism, simply because it seems like there are more tools getting built around. Well, I don't think. Yeah.
Man clearly needs a REST API.
Yeah.
That's what I hear. I mean, that's what everybody tells me.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, there's
brownies, so we're done. There's brownies.
Yeah, so, yeah, Michelle, we should force you to look at the food that we have at Meetup.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Thanks so much for presenting. Yeah.
So there's another like interesting problem.